Let's take a look at a technique that is used a lot, which is a simple technique called park cell. This technique is very useful and very effective, and although it may seem basic, it must be trained to a high level to use it effectively. So let's take a look at park cell. So this is how we see park cell presented in the first form. This is the full extent of our park cell. Notice we are in supination. We twist to pronation, and our park cell is in pronation. So as we draw it back, supination, pronation, pronation, pronation. So this is the full extent of our park cell. What that means is that our park cell can be here, here, here. Anywhere along this line, our park cell can exist. However, if we go past the shoulder, our park cell now becomes weak. If we bring the elbow too close to the body, here, the park cell becomes weak. For good structure, you should have at least a fist distance away from your body when you're performing park cell or any other Wing Chun technique except Wu cell, because Wu cell gains its structure from driving the elbow forward from this position. Okay, so once we now know that park cell can be here, 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 we can start to play around with the park cell a bit. So let's take the park cell from square stance, which we use to define our parameters clearly and understand our center line clearly. Center line, past center line, full extension of park cell. So we can start on center line or on the shoulder or anywhere in between those parameters. Anywhere past the center line, our elbow starts to go into Wu cell position. So we have to give our technique structure from the Wu cell mechanics, which is different. It may seem like the same technique, but Wu cell energy is driving forward the elbow, and park cell energy is driving the from the elbow forward through the palm, not through the wrist and the twist. Okay, so let's take our square stance, center line, and change it to side stance, which is more adept for fighting stance. So if we're in this stance and we have our man cell and our Wu cell presented, we can see that we're halfway towards our park cell. So when we're in this position here, we have to include the body. Including the body is very important, because if we're doing a short, sharp movement, we're not using the full extent of the park cell, then we must generate the power from the movement of the body and a slight movement of the park cell and pronunciation of the park cell. All we need for park cell is that pronunciation, and we add the body. And then those two connecting at the same time creates power. Okay, so when we're in side stance and we want to park cell, it's a slight movement, slight movement, slight movement. But because we're including the body in this movement and the pronunciation of our technique, this is how we establish strong structure and ging when we pronounce our technique like so. That's all it takes, believe it or not. No matter how strong someone is, if you jolt them with this and sink the body in, they're gonna move. Their limb will not take that. It's at least gonna jolt for long enough for you to get your punch in. So how do we train that? How do we practice that? It's quite simple, really. It's just organizing your timing and your body mechanics to be in sync. So if I move my park cell independently without the body, then this is not generating as much power. If I include the body, I'm exaggerating the movement a bit, but I'm showing you the timing and the organization of the body. So the body and the park cell are working in tandem. Once we can establish this smooth, slow up mechanics fully expressed in the park cell in our square stance, we can then take that same timing and make it short. So simply learn the parameters of your park cell. It's easy because you have to stop in line with your shoulder or just shy of your shoulder. You need to pull the wrist back, pronounce the palm forward, and make sure the thumb is on the outside. Okay? And then that establishes the firmness, pulling the muscle taut so that you have good structure. Once we know that, all we have to do is make it smaller. We always start large with the technique, and then we can make it much smaller. We can also adapt it as long as we're getting the principles correct. Remember, also in our form, we see this type of park cell or palm strike, whatever you want to call it. So from that information, we can gather that park cell can work all the way to 90 degrees to 45 degrees. 45 degrees is best because it moves the opponent's arm out of the way, and it also restricts their space by pressing forward. So diagonal is always the best choice. However, if a punch comes and you need to block it like so, if you can see, I'm still in my Sunim Tao or Wing Chun parameters when it comes to park cell. However, because I have changed my position, it may look different, but it's exactly the same. This is another key element of Wing Chun, is that essentially we're always doing our techniques as the form says. However, our body will move the technique to where it needs to be. So let's practice the park cell quickly. Go into side stance from form, learn how to pronounce your technique. Pronounce your technique, pronounce your technique, pronounce your technique. Body, body, pronunciation, pronunciation, body, body, and pronunciation. So now, if you want to add a punch to our park cell, stop the energy, push the energy from the elbow and the hip. So 1, 2. Again, we start big, we make it big and punch. Then we can make it smaller. So we can go boom, boom. So start large, start to minimalize, and work out how you can make your technique as small as it can, but still include all the elements that we discussed. If you practice the simple formula of this, 1, 2, 1, 2, not forgetting that you start to go from supination to pronation, supination to pronation. Then you understand the timing, move the hip in time. Then we make it smaller, boom, 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 include the hip. Then we go to side stance. We use our guard hands. Learn how to pronounce park cell from guard hands. Here, my wusa is already established. All I have to do is change the direction of energy and the way I'm pulling my wrist. I pull my wrist back directly in line with my palm for park cell, and wusa, I pull it back towards my chest here. So from here, that's park cell. And it's gonna have a slight circular motion to keep it in position. Park cell, park cell. You can switch hand, park cell, move back. And then stop, forward, stop, forward. If you have any questions, let me know.